Kettlebell Drenka. Rating season is upon us once again. The 5th annual Twin Cities Kettlebell Open is coming, and registration is now open. On Saturday, September 13th, the steel will ring out once more at Northbound Training in Little Canada, Minnesota. Honorable warriors will test their mettle in person or through online video submission, all for their chance at glory. Fight for your clan, fight for your name, claim your spoils and your glory. Early entry is just $100, with raffle prizes for all competitors and cash prizes for the top in-person performers. Every lifter enters the battle. A few leave legends. Go now to TwinCitiesKettlebellClub.com to register today. Come, answer the call of battle, sign up today, and may your name forever ring out in the Hall of Champions. Go to TwinCitiesKettlebellClub.com. Welcome to the Platform Podcast, where we talk to coaches, athletes, experts, and real people to learn about their approaches to training, nutrition, mindset, and much more. I'm your host, Jordan Kundi Wright, founder and head coach of the Twin Cities Kettlebell Club, and our mission is to become our best selves through sport. Today's episode zooms in on the post-competition debrief with one of my athletes who is living that mission every day. His name is Cole Moore. He is fresh off the platform from his latest meet, which was the WKSF World Championships in Busto Arsizio, Milan, Italy. Join me to walk through the structured reflection process that I use with my athletes. You'll hear the questions I pose, Cole's candid answers, and how we translate those insights into actionable next steps for his training cycle. So, without further ado, let's step onto the platform with Cole Moore. All right, welcome into this week's episode of the Platform Podcast. I am your host, Jordan Kundi Wright, and I have a very special guest with me today. His name is Cole Moore, and he just got back from competing in the WKSF World Championships, and he is a Twin Cities Kettlebell Club athlete. So I thought it would be fun, since we needed to touch base anyways, to see how he felt about his set and ask him a little bit of questions, debrief like I typically do with my athletes after they compete. Thought it would be really fun to bring him on to the podcast and see. I'll give you guys a glimpse behind the curtain a little bit on how we go through debriefs and what we do to gather intel and how it informs our next training block. But first, I want to give Cole a chance to introduce himself. So Cole, thanks for coming on the Platform Podcast, brother.
Thanks you for having me. It's good to chat. Jordan said I just got back from Worlds, so I will quantify. I got back late yesterday, so if I'm a little spacey from being tired, please forgive me.
We did talk about how to overcome jet lag for performance on the platform. I don't think I briefed you on how to overcome jet lag for performance on the Platform Podcast.
No,
apologies.
Yeah, it would be good to talk about that. Yeah. Do you want me to say a little bit about my background?
Yeah. So give us a little bit about your origin story. Tell us who you are first and foremost. Obviously, I know you a little bit from coaching you, but let the people know, who are you? How old are you? Where do you train out of? All that good stuff.
All right. Yeah, my name's Cole. I train in DC. I've been lifting for competitive kettlebell lifting for a little over 2 years now, 28 years old. And before that, I was for a long time a swimmer and water polo player through high school and through my undergrad, and then
which, as a coach,
now in my grad school,
high tolerance for suffering and high lag threshold, because if you can swim for extended periods of time like that, you are used to having your muscles basically pumping battery acid and still being able to go.
Yeah, all of my time spent treading water with the weight belt makes it so that the leg burn in a long jerk that is. It doesn't make it any less painful, but it's something that I'm used to.
It's a familiar pain, is what? Yes, it's a familiar pain. Okay.
Yeah.
How is it that you got into this crazy ass sport? I think I know the answer, but I want to hear the story. How is it that you stumbled upon kettlebell sport? Because nobody gets into them in the States, at least.
I had lifted with kettlebell before, and much more what I think most people would consider like a hard style way, but that was definitely not my focus. I was not just doing hard style kettlebell. I was really just doing I would just say cross training for water polo, for swimming, and just kettlebells were getting sprinkled in among that, along with traditional stuff, deadlifts, push up, bench, and things like that. And I always enjoyed the kettlebell stuff. And then I will admit I played around a little bit with the sport style training after being exposed to it online. But what really got me into it was I did a summer internship out in DC where I now live and was a little ways away from Mike Silverman's gym and thought, you know what? I'm here for the summer. It'd be really fun to just do the deep dive into something I've never really done before while I'm here and I actually have the opportunity. That having an actual coach in person in this world is not always easy to have, depending on where you live. So
Yeah.
jumped in and got addicted, and here I am now.
Yeah, shout out to Mike Silverman, my boy. He referred Cole over to me at one point when he said he's gonna progress faster beyond my programming capabilities or interests. So I'm gonna pass him off to you for programming. I'll keep checking his technique and keep coaching him up on his technique whenever he can pop in the gym. And that was the nature of how I met Cole. And I'll tell you, he said, "Oh, he moves like a poem, so you don't have to worry about that. And you can't break him. So anything that I prescribed in the early days that made you think, oh, what an asshole, I'm gonna pass that buck entirely to Mike because he told me I can't break you, which of course means that as a coach, I'm like, interesting. This is a very interesting thing to hear.
I haven't broken yet, so keep it going.
I do genuinely try not to break my athletes. We have rule
Yeah.
number one. Rule number one: we don't get hurt in practice. That doesn't mean we
Yeah.
get hurt on the platform in competition, but we don't get hurt in practice. We try really hard not to get hurt in practice. Yeah, that's fantastic, man. How did you get into water polo? I'm curious about that. That is something I've never asked you, and I'm curious. Where did water polo?
Well, my first exposure to it was, I don't remember if I was maybe 9 years old. My family was living in near San Diego at the time. And I joined basically like a summer, I don't know if it wasn't a summer camp, but a summer program where basically they had people who knew how to play water polo teach us kids the rules and the
Yeah,
fundamentals,
like
how to,
try it out.
yeah, what are the rules? How do you tread water? Because in water polo, I don't know if you're familiar with the term egg beater, but it's a specific way that you tread water when you
Yeah.
play water polo that allows you to just maintain a stable height while treading water, which you really need to be able to
Keeps
actually
your
catch and
body
throw
alive.
and things like that. Whereas a lot of people do like frog kicks, but so that they end up bobbing up and down, and that's not conducive to actually passing a ball. So I learned that, and then my family moved. I was a Navy kid, and we moved away a long time, and but I remember enjoying it. So that brought me to joining the swim team, which is just more available throughout the country than water polo. And I swam for a long time. And then finally, we moved back to the West Coast to Washington State when I was partway through high school. And I joined the team as soon as we moved there, started doing summer training with them, and then played for the rest of my high school time, and then played club at Colorado School of Mines through my undergrad years.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, water polo seems like such a West Coast thing to me. Like it's one of those things
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really
I think there's a
proliferate
few
across the
spots,
country yet.
but it really is dominated by the West Coast. I'm not really sure why. It would run really well in a lot of the Southeast where it's warm all the time and the pools are able to be
Anywhere you've
open.
got a pool, right? Like I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Maybe just because it's hard, but I don't know. It is just an interesting. That's one of those interesting. I don't know why that happened, but
yeah.
it's fascinating. So you picked up kettlebell. You picked up kettlebell sport cross training to stay in shape for water polo, and then we're just like, yeah, this is my kind of suffering, and here we are.
Appreciated that it combined lifting weight with a lot of training ideas and methods that I had picked up from swimming and water polo of doing like intervals and sprint work days and longer endurance days, training for swimming and polo, and then just doing that in a completely different way with lifting weights was just very satisfying to combine those two things.
So what did you study at Mines?
Physics. I have a degree in physics.
Nice. So you understand the way things move and the way things
Yeah.
work. So when I say things like we want to create opposing force vectors so that we can maximize the lever angle and increase our
Yeah.
efficiency overhead, you're like, all right, you're speaking my language. This is
Yeah.
why Cole
Exactly.
and I get along so well, is because now you could nerd out a lot harder on physics than I could, but when I start talking about moment arms and lever length and things like that, sometimes people are just like, eyes glaze over and they're like, I have no idea what you're
Yeah. You're speaking my language when you say things like that. I know exactly what you mean.
which brings us to a little bit, brings us to your snatch, right? Your snatch technique. That's one of the things that we've been working on is snatch technique, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse here. So first, let's talk a little bit about Worlds. Like, you just got back from competing in how do you say it? Busto Arsizio? Is that
Busto Arsizio.
Arsizio? That's right. Yeah, Busto
Yeah.
Arsizio, Italy.
Yeah, I had to practice that a couple times. I was when we got our train tickets to get to the town from the airport, I was practicing it under my breath so that I could say it correctly.
I think they just say
The
Busto,
teller.
right? They just say Busto. They don't do they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
you competed in biathlon 24 kg in the amateur division.
yeah. Yeah.
And what did you weigh in at the comp?
I weighed in at 87.4.
Nice.
Yeah, barely in the 95 category.
Where we needed it to be, right where we needed it to
Yep.
be. Like, basically as heavy as possible while still under the limit. That is what we're going for. So tell the people a little bit, just give me just a high level of your experience. What was it like for you? What were some of your favorite parts?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. Very overwhelming, I will say at first, but not in a bad way. The big part was you show up for weigh-ins and immediately you're surrounded by, I would say, if you nerd out about kettlebell sport, you're surrounded by like all of these legends, but they're just all casual at the same time. You're like, oh, I've never met Kim Fox before. Here she is. I've never met Lorna before, and here she is. And I think even, I don't know if I could say his last name correctly, Alexander Vostov was there. And you're just like, man, he's no offense to him, little for how well he moves. So it was cool to see and meet all these folks.
Yeah.
But again,
You will not have that experience if you get to meet the super heavies. You'll be like, oh yeah, they're every bit as big
yeah.
as I thought they would be.
But yeah, so it was fun. A lot of names to remember, but everyone is super nice. And then you have a few minutes to socialize, and then next thing you know, you're shoved into like basically a locker room down in your underpants to weigh in. But it was fine. Weigh in went smoothly and no big deal. And then it was, I will admit, nice for me lifting biathlon. I didn't have any events on the first day, so I was able to go day one and just watch and just observe how are they running things, what's the routine when you get on the platform, and also start to get an idea of what the judging quality is like, because the judging is definitely more strict than a lot of more local, more casual competitions. They really want the fixation to hold for that moment longer than I think you sometimes are used to.
Yeah, they need that total stillness, and they have a very strict definition of what total stillness and full attention.
Yes. But to me, of course, I got the advantage that I got to see that for my set, which was really nice. Then on the second day, I lifted early. I was the second flight of the day, 8:15 in the morning. But I went in, I'll say, happy to be there, and told myself my goal was to just get a respectable number, and I didn't want to get any no counts. And I achieved that. I got 100 jerks, which is 3 less than my PR. But with the extra focus on that total stillness and slowing down, I'm pretty happy with that, and 0 no counts. So I was very happy with the jerk set.
Proud coach on that one. When I got your text, I so badly wanted to watch you lift live, but it was like 2 a.m. and I was like, I was honestly up until 1 a.m. and I was like, I could stay up another hour and then watch Cole's set, but I was just so wrecked. I was like, I couldn't do it, and I had to take my kid to lacrosse and stuff in the morning. So I wanted to do it. When I saw your result and got your message that you got 0 no counts, I was like, yes, because we had talked a lot about how the judging standards are going to be pretty strict, and that made me really happy. That made me really happy to see. I think you also said it was the most comfortable you had felt in a 10-minute set.
Yes,
on jerk.
The last 10-minute set that I had done with the 24s, I like I said, my official score was 103, but I think with the judging that there was at World, I think there would have been a handful of no counts. There were a couple of towards the end when I got tired, shaky rep where
Questionable
the
fixation.
bell went overhead and it didn't come back down, but there was definitely some tremble in the arm a little bit. But this one, every rep locked out nice and felt very solid. So I was very pleased.
And it's a nice round number, right? 10 times
Yeah,
10.
yeah. There was that point where I saw it, I was like, all right, I can hit exactly 100 for sure. Printed a little bit extra that last minute to get there, but it's very
I was
satisfying.
just going to ask. So, if you recall, how did your pacing line up to what we had planned ahead of time? Because we had talked through, as we typically do, we talked through a couple of strategies. Here's what a couple of approaches you can take. But how did it play out for you in real time, as far as what your pacing felt like?
I think I did. We talked about starting at the first 2 minutes, started at like 10 or 11 pace, something that is comfortable. And then at the 2 minute mark, check in, see how you're feeling, maybe up it a little bit.
Feel you can, we go up. If you don't, we stay steady.
Yeah, yeah. So I did that, and I don't remember the exact breakdown, but I think I was able to up. I think I did 10 RPM for the first 2 minutes, then increased it to 11 for a couple minutes past that. And at one point, I dropped back down to about 10-ish. I think I slowed down a little, and I think like from minute 8 to minute 9, I only got say 8. But then I saw that number and I printed out 12 more.
That's
I crammed out the 12 that I could to get to 100 at the end.
That's what we call that ninth minute, right? Minute 8 to minute 9. I call that the death minute, right?
Yeah.
Some people it's minute 7, some people it's minute 8, right? But it's really like those 2 minutes, right? If you can get from minute 7 to minute 9, that is like
Yeah.
you're gonna die in a set. If the set's gonna end because you just can't go, like that's usually when it happens, and it's usually because your brain is just I can't go any further. I can't go any. But once you get past that, if you see that clock turn and you're like, one more minute, like you find that adrenaline dump comes, the crowd
Mhm.
gets going, and you just if you can survive those death minutes, if you can get through them when your brain is screaming at you to put them down, almost always you finish, or you go until like you literally fail. Sometimes
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you fail in the 10th minute. Okay, then you gave everything you had, but if you don't put them down, you get through that death minute, and yeah, that adrenaline kicks in. When you hit 12 in your final minute, the crowd was going crazy. How was the energy in the room that early in the morning?
It was not as crowded as it is later, but there was some good energy.
Yeah.
A couple of folks from the team showed up and were plenty loud for me. So I was definitely getting what I needed from the team.
That's what I heard on the recording. I speak some Italian, I speak some other languages, but just like bits and pieces, nothing that I'm fluent in. Basically what I the stuff that was being shouted in English, I was like, oh, I know. And some of those voices I recognize, so that was good to hear. That made me happy to hear. How'd you feel coming out of that set? When you were done and you put him down, did you feel like I did everything I could? Did you feel like you had more in the tank, or were you like that was exactly how I executed my plan?
I felt pretty satisfied. The constant curse is sometimes you set the belt down and you're like, maybe I could have done a couple more.
Always the thing when you finish all 10 minutes, you're like, man, I didn't quite leave it all out there.
Yeah, but I'm very happy with how it went first time going to Worlds. And again, I was definitely hyper focused on just trying to keep the rep as crisp and clean as I could for the judging, and definitely consciously made a decision partway through the set, prioritize that over pace. So I was very satisfied, I'll say.
So now knowing that and having had this experience, right, and seeing how stringent the judging is at the highest level, how is that going to affect how you train, how you practice when you're back home? Are you going to try and hit that same level of fixation? Or are you wanting to still try and push pace, knowing that you're probably not going to be able to achieve that pace at Worlds, but that you might want to train above that pace to build capacity? What's your preference there?
I have been thinking about this and I don't know if there's a perfect answer or if I have a super strong preference to one or the other. I could imagine say, I don't know the exact amount, but say some period fairly removed from the next competition, a stage where you're pushing the pace and maybe you allow a couple of sloppy reps during the end of your set or something like that, but you're really just trying to build capacity. And then as you get closer to competition, shifting and focusing more heavily on quality so that perfection is really dialed in. But of course, you don't want to, in the earlier phase, you don't want to let it get really sloppy and start building bad habit or anything. But both capacity and pristine rep are both essential. So I think that there's something to be said for having some time where you're dedicated to maybe focusing your mental energy on one versus the other. Because it's very difficult when you're doing a long set to have more than, say, one big emphasis on your brain at a time.
No, I completely agree with you. And it is, I don't want to say a trick question, but it is one of those that, like you said, it's a balancing act, and there's benefit to both approaches at various times. And I agree with the way that you framed it is the closer you get to competition, the more you really want to focus on quality reps. But there is also definitely benefit to there being times when you're pushing pace beyond what you know you can get fixation for in competition. And that's one of the things we see, like when I'm practicing military snatch or when we're pushing your pace on snatch sprints, right? I'll prescribe you 24 RPMs, knowing that if you tried to push 24 RPMs at Worlds, there's no effing way we're getting 24 counts, right? Like it's just not happening. So
Yeah.
we practice that overpace capacity to build that energy system so that you can go that fast, because that is also one of the things that you have to have exercised that technique, that muscle, that energy system, that mental capacity, all of those things to be able to know that you have 24 reps in a minute in the bag. Like you have that in your capability if you need it, like especially when we get into that last minute where it's like, hey, I'm going to go as fast as I physically can at the end of this, while still making sure I get fixation counts from my judge every time. But it's good to know and have some experience having gone basically at max speed as fast as you can. If you've never practiced sprinting, like literally sprinting, how are you gonna sprint at the end of a race? It's one of those kind of things. But so what was your biggest takeaway for jerk specifically, coming back from that? What was like your biggest takeaway from this competition? What was your biggest lesson learned?
Biggest lesson learned on jerk set, I would say definitely confidence. I was a little bit, my biggest worry going into the jerk set really was that I would get into my own head due to not that I hadn't trained properly, but I was worried about jet lag and I was worried about lifting at 8:15 in the morning on top of jet lag, which I normally work out when I train at home after I get off work. So my body's used to exercising in the afternoon. And I definitely have noticed even when I'm home that if I wake up early and exercise early in the morning, I definitely feel sluggish and slow and tired, which I think is totally natural and totally normal. But I was worried that plus the jet lag was going to just get in my head during this set. But I'm very happy that I was able to basically convince myself before the set, you know what? You can survive this 10 minutes. You can definitely do it. And there was that point, I slowed down and I got tired, but there was a point to maybe minute 7 or minute 8 where I was like, all right, you've survived enough 2 or 3 minute sets. This is yours. Like you can finish it. So I would just say having the confidence to know you're going to finish the beginning made a very big difference in like my mental state during the full 10 minutes.
Nice. That is an excellent answer. I'm really happy to hear that is a really good lesson learned. Knowing, and that is part of the joy of getting experience on the platform too. It's just the more data points that you have to show you that you can push through and that you can be successful I think is hugely important. I'm curious, how did you feel about the jet lag? Because we talked a little bit about it. You were getting in fairly early. There was only so much we could do with your training schedule prior to you leaving, just because life, right? Like you got to train what you got to train. It's more important that you get the training in than that you get it in the ideal time. There's only so much we can adjust on that side. So how did you handle the jet lag? How much did it buffet you? How early did you get in? All of those pieces.
Yeah. So I lifted on Saturday and we landed in Milan Wednesday, I think our flight landed at maybe 11 in the morning after doing an overnight flight. I did do my best to sleep on the flight as
I was going to ask, were you able to? I know you were trying to. I was curious if you
I
were
would
able to.
say I think it was like a 9 hour flight. I probably slept 5 of the hours, which
That's pretty good.
it's not bad. I'm pretty happy that I was able to get that. I know for some folks it's tough to sleep on a plane.
Yeah, I can't unless I'm medicated with
Yeah.
Xanax or something that's just basically going to knock me out. I basically can't sleep.
So then we got in. There's that. I've heard you want to get your eating and your sleeping schedule as adjusted as quickly as you can. So we got in, had lunch, and then of course you run into, at least for me, I normally eat dinner at 6:30, and in Italy they don't eat dinner until 7:30 or 8 at night. So
I didn't even think about that. Is actually not something I even accounted for. I didn't even think about that. So that's a lesson learned for me. I didn't even think about that. I didn't even put that in my jet lag episode. Like I didn't even think about cultural differences in when dinner time is, like an accounting for
yeah, so I think
yeah,
most restaurants
yeah. I
in
didn't think
town
about that.
opened at either 7 or 7:30. So that was like the earliest dinner at 7. And at 7, you don't have your full selection of restaurant options yet. I think we found one that opened at 7, grabbed dinner, went to bed, maybe 9-ish. Try to keep it as close to normal as possible with maybe a little bit of extra sleep. And then, like I said, I had all of Thursday and all of Friday to basically just try to adjust. Didn't have to lift, just had to show up, cheer.
And when were you able to get hands on bells? That was one thing I wasn't sure of, like how soon you guys would get access to the warm up bells, or if there would be any.
When they let us play with the warm up bells during the weigh-in time.
Okay.
So on Thursday, I got to get in. I just did a couple of really short sets, just trying to keep my technique feeling comfortable and also to loosen up, get the blood flowing a little bit after sitting on
Just
the
get
plane
moving.
for a long time. And then they wanted the warm-up belt reserved for the folks who were actually lifting on Friday, which makes sense. So I didn't touch that, but it was nice to get at least a little bit of time with them on Thursday. Then, yeah, I woke up quite a bit earlier than my 8:15 lift. I think I woke up at like day something the day of, which I normally, when I go to work, I wake up at 6:15 in the morning anyway. So that was pretty much my normal time. So that was fine. And the hotel I was staying in was, let's say, roughly a 30-minute walk from the sports center where the event was held. So I actually think that walk was really nice. It really gave me the chance to wake up while I
Warm up,
walked over beforehand.
Get some movement, get the body awake.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that walk was very nice for me. I think I hit the warm up area at 7:30 before lifting at 8:15 and just started playing with some light bells and just moving and getting my head ready. And yeah, that was my strategy. No idea if it was the ideal, but I really just wanted to have a couple of days, do my best to start to feel normal again. And then, like I said, I really wanted to get in there that walk, plus getting into the warm up area early, just so that I could get my body to realize, all right, we're going to have to do some work soon, which it's not used to in the mornings. So I think it was good.
This episode of the Platform Podcast is brought to you by the American Kettlebell Lifters Union, the official governing body and WKSF representative in America. Our national team just won silver at the 2025 WKSF World Championships, and to celebrate, we're offering 25% off for new members with the discount code AKLU Silver 25. Why join? AKLU sanctioned events set the standard for kettlebell sport with certified judges and unified rules and ranking tables. We have a member elected board. Members get exclusive discounts on event registrations, gear, apparel, coaching, and more. Plus, as a 501c3 nonprofit, your dues go to initiatives like our athlete support for USA National Team qualifiers, where we provide sponsored uniforms and local fundraising support. Visit aklu.net and join today, because kettlebell sport in America only grows when lifters have a voice. The AKLU, for the lifters, by the lifters.
Yeah.
Now, you had how long between sets? 1 hour and 15 minutes? Did they have you like right just over just
I think it was an hour and 20, but yeah, basically. Yeah, I want to say the way it worked out was almost an hour and 20 on the dot.
yeah, pretty run a pretty tight windows because by rule you get an hour. You have to have a minimum of an hour between jerk and snatch.
Yeah,
They generally keep it pretty. But some smaller competitions, you might get 2 hours between your lifts. You
yeah.
might even get a little bit longer, but not at Worlds, man. It
No,
is like,
no, they keep it tight.
it is like you're done with your jerk set and you better go get your gummy bears or whatever your between set the sugar crush is. You better get that. You better get that in right quick because they're gonna have you
Mhm.
back there quickly. What was your plan in between your jerk and your snatch set?
Plan was to eat an apple. I like to eat, my usual between the set is fruit. Easier for me to eat when I am just like parched from 10 minutes of jerks.
Yeah.
And I drank a bunch of Gatorade, not the sugar-free Gatorade, trying to get as much sugar into my body basically as I could without making myself feel gross on the inside.
Yeah, which is a struggle in an hour and 20 minutes. It's like
Yes.
how do I get 40, 50 grams of sugar in my bloodstream to minimize the shakes and start getting that recovery cycle going while also not making myself feel like I have this big fundus of food in my stomach or having a whole bunch of water sloshing around. Like
Yeah.
I'm a baby about that kind of stuff. That's why I do gummy bears or things that are relatively small in your stomach but break down into just simple saccharides really quickly. That's my go-to is gummy
Mhm.
bears. Albanese.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard. I totally agree that like the small is nice, but I just feel candy dries out of my mouth more. It's
But
like
this
the
is one of those
crisp
like,
and like
we don't change
juiciness of an
things on
apple.
game day, right? We if you
Yeah.
that's one of those, hey, if that works for you, you like fruit, cool. Like I don't mess with people's routine, right? We don't
Mhm.
run new experiments at the competition, right?
No, no.
We're like, hey, we stick with what we know we're comfortable with. Again, it's that confidence thing, like you said, right? This thing I want to do is have my athletes in their head about, oh, I changed, oh, I've got new chalk, or there's already enough variables going on. You're in a new place and
Yeah.
lifting on the world state. You got all these other things. Last thing we need to do is throw another variable into the mix. So how did you feel after, at what point you had an hour and 20 minutes? At what point, what did you do in between? Did you just stay up on your feet and stay moving? Did you take a rest and sit down and then re-warm up? What was your approach to
I walked around, did like a lap or two of the stadium. Then I sat while I ate a little bit. Did it like a lap or two after getting down, sat down, ate a little bit, and got back up and paced a little bit. And then maybe 30 minutes before I lifted, went back into the room, started doing just like some swings and a couple of snatch just to get the movement familiar. Because I think my heart was still pumping, not pounding, but it was even an hour after 10-minute set, you're still
lots
feeling
of
it a
adrenaline?
little bit.
Lots of
Yeah.
adrenaline. That sympathetic nervous system is hyped at that point, right? Like you're in it now, and that is one of the challenging parts, I think, especially of biathlon on the world stage, right? Is you have a short break between. You have to get really amped up for your jerk set. Then you have to get down to try and get some recovery, get some food in, slow things down a little bit, and then you got to get back up again. It's a very jarring. It can be a very jarring experience. That's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
So everyone's a little bit different there on how they try and handle it. Did you feel like you were pretty prepared going into your snatch set? Did you like how your between lift routine felt?
Between lifts, I felt pretty good, and my warm up felt pretty good. The part that I wasn't super happy with was just the very short window to go up and actually prep the bell and chalk. And I don't feel like I was prepared for that necessarily. I
Yeah.
did have someone come up and help me. We were allowed to have someone come up and help. But the one thing was that I just didn't account for was really getting all of the chalk from the previous lifters off of the bell that it just got very clumpy and all over the handle. Because you really want to get that off and then reapply sort of some fresh chalk. And I didn't bring up any sandpaper or any tool to do. And that definitely is not the only thing that went wrong in my snatch set, but it definitely messed with me. during the snatch set.
Yeah, let's
Um,
let's get into it. Tell the people what happened. I know what happened. Obviously, we
yeah,
know what
yeah.
happened, but
So the snatch set,
tell
yeah,
them
a
what
few
happened.
reps felt fine, and definitely was feeling shorter rests, was tired, and the handle, like I said, was just rough. It was pitching the skin of my hand more than I'm used to at home, at least. But by itself, you just got to deal. And honestly,
How were the bells themselves? Trying to set aside the chalk component because I know that was a big part of it, but how are the bells themselves? How did they feel from a how familiar did they feel compared to what you're used to lifting with?
they
How did
were
they feel?
they were okay. They were not exactly the same. The 24s that I have are the Vulcan brand, for those who are familiar with the brand.
Little wider handle, but
Yeah, the handle is a little bit wider, and I think the window is a little bit taller,
yeah,
but
it
not
is a big
not like
window.
yeah, yeah. Where the window is shorter. I have lifted with like King's bells and bells of steel bells. It was closer to those in dimension, but not exactly the same. And I would say it wasn't drastic, but the weight distribution, it was maybe a little bit more bottom heavy than some of the others, because a lot of them they're hollowed out from below. If it's not a full 32 where the entire bell cavity is full of weight, the weight is up near the top, and you can feel that in the weight distribution. This one was a little lower, but it wasn't awful.
Yeah, but that center of
Like,
gravity
it
being towards the
definitely,
bottom can be really problematic, especially on snatch, where you've
yes.
got that long lever, right? And if the center,
Hmm.
we're gonna physics nerd out a little bit here. What does that do on the whip action
Yeah.
to the person that actually has a degree in physics? How does that center of gravity being further from where you're gripping it affect the flip and the impact that you're gonna get on that?
Oh, yeah. It's gonna apply more force if it catches, since it's got a bigger lever arm to the skin. And I find, for me, what there's a whole number of things, but in practice, what ends up happening is the margin of error for me in catching it this right, so that it doesn't catch on my calluses or anything like that, becomes tighter. I have less room before it starts to become a problem. At least in practice, that's what ends up happening for me. Of course, my form could get better, but I definitely have found that there's always a little bit of wiggle room around perfect form, but that change in center of gravity reduces that wiggle room. And I was definitely experiencing it while I was
Yeah.
lifting.
Yeah. So you ended up catching a
Um,
tear at what point in your snatch set?
I was, I don't actually remember the exact number, but it was 50 something reps. And I was already trying to
About three and a
compensate.
half minutes in, like around
Yeah, three and a
three
half
and a half.
minutes in, I was already switching to sort of survival snatches. My grip was getting tired, but it was definitely my hand was, I could feel it, and I was trying to keep it alive as long as I could. And then maybe I will say I probably was a little overconfident. I was pretty convinced, based on training and how I was feeling, that my grip, the actual grip strength, I had a few more reps in me. But
Yeah.
on one of them, my hand tore, and when that skin tore, it just split. I just was not able to hold on to the bell, and it just pulled out of my hand and dropped it. What happens? I'm actually not that bummed about it. I'll
You
admit.
see anybody else have that same experience where they have
Yeah, there was a lot of hand tears. Not everyone lost the bell necessarily, but I was not the only one to have things like that happen to me during the day. It's part of the game. When you're pushing yourself as far as you can, especially on the snatch, it's not guaranteed to happen, but the likelihood goes up. So,
if you're not chucking,
um,
you're not trying. Like at a certain
yeah.
point, if you're not losing the bell because your grip just gave out, like and I say that more in practice, right? But at a certain point, like if you're not pushing yourself to that fringe where your grip, you're like, I might toss this bell if I do one more rep, then you're probably not quite reaching the fringe of your capability on your grip endurance. And that's, like you said, when the margin of error is this big,
Mhm.
sometimes it just takes one bad rep, and you had what I would characterize as a catastrophic tear, because it's one of those where it's such a bad tear that happens on one specific rep that you literally can't hold the bell on that rep. You lose the bell and your set's over. Even though you're like, man, if I just could have survived that tear, I could have switched to my other hand and I'd have gone as deep as I can with my left hand. Maybe I end up doing 5.5 minutes on my left hand, or maybe I end up only doing another 3.5 minutes. But that's always the
Yeah.
that's always
Yeah.
the
Well,
thing. When you drop one,
it's
it is what it is. But it's such
it's
a
the nature of it. Yeah. I think I'm not even that bummed about the number. I'm just like, if I could have just held it on the rep where the tear happened and gotten it to my other hand, I could have gotten at least a couple more.
yeah.
Like I said, it's just part of the sport. And when it's your first time at Worlds, I think that it's best to just go in with the mentality of having best time possible, which is what I did. So I still had a great time and had fun, even if I messed up my hand and didn't get the score that I was hoping for. Really, it was still a blast. So what's
So
there
what
to
would you
complain
say
about?
your number one lesson learned from Snatch would be?
Number one lesson learned, I would say, I think that there's many things, but try I need to learn to be able to feel a little bit better exactly where I'm at on on the snatch, because I think there was I definitely in my mind had more had a couple more reps on that hand before I needed to make the switch. But obviously I was a little bit off in that assertion.
I see, but that's one I might actually challenge you a little bit on that. I think, but
All right.
because it sounds like you did have the capability in the
Yeah.
I honestly think like that was one of those you caught a bad rep, and maybe that's just focus, like just
Yeah.
really staying dialed and
Yeah.
like really just staying focused on that. Where are you, especially when you know that center of gravity on the bell has so little
Mm.
margin of error, like just really being dialed in on just your hand position, just really focusing
Yeah.
on your hand position.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you did, and that was like one of the first things you said. I know I had more reps in me. It was just
Yeah.
I tore my hand and I just literally lost the bell, and that's one of those
Yeah.
shit. Because like I know what your numbers were in training. Like I had more reps than that, but it was
Yeah.
like. So I would say maybe we just reframe that a little bit. Just stay really focused, especially with new bells with a slight
Yeah.
feel. Stay really focused on hand placement on snatch,
Yes.
especially, right? Just
Yeah.
really focus on where's my hand placement on every single rep, because especially at the weights that you're training at and planning on progressing to, one bad rep is all it's all it takes. The margin of error as you move
Mm.
closer to those pro weights too, like one bad rep is all it takes
Yeah.
to really lose one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we reframe that a little bit as just
Keep that focus. Yeah. No, I think
focused on
that's
hand
good,
technique.
because I think that at least for me on Snatch, I do have a tendency, I can keep like a really laser focus on, say, one specific form critique that I want to work on for the first minute or two. But the nature of Snatch that sort of puts you, going to sound crazy to people who are new to the sport, but it puts you in just like a Zen mode, even though
Yeah,
you're
going to
breathing
flow.
really hard. And then it's very easy to escape into autopilot in Snatch without, when you really don't necessarily want to be. Like we said, especially in this case, you want to be focused. You want to allow yourself a little bit of relaxation, but you need to keep a certain level of focus. And at least for me, it's easy to accidentally flip a little bit too comfortable. Um, Sometimes.
I feel that so much, because that is one of those like that. And I think you're right, especially with snatch, because it does feel so fluid, especially when it's going right.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing about it. When it's going well, it feels so fluid that you slip
Hmm.
into flow state. And there is that kind of like fine line between being in flow state and being like, I'm just zoned out. I'm not even really paying attention. I'm just moving the bell. I'm going through. And then
Yeah.
I've had that where I missed my number because I'm like, oh shit, I hit 18. I only hit 18 that minute. Oh, I thought I was cruising at 20. It's, yeah, but you
Yeah.
stop paying attention to your pace, right?
Mm.
You just get into your flow and you stop paying attention, or you catch one bad rep, or like that is a real thing. Like the
Yeah.
difference between like flow and focused flow, and like slipping from focused to flow into just like cruise control, not autopilot. And you don't want to be in
Yeah.
autopilot. You want to be in like that focused flow state.
Yeah.
That is a tricky needle to thread sometimes.
Yeah. So I will say, I will request more snatch practice in whatever our next block is. Because I think I'm also just a very big proponent of you just got to practice the rep. You just have to put in your time and do a lot of practice repetitions. That's one thing that I learned from swimming is you can swim for years and you still got to just do the drills day in, day out. You just have to do it to get better at it. So
I tell my daughter, even the pros still hit off of a tee, right? You got to keep doing the drill work. Even when you're confident that your technique is solid, you still got to drill. You got to put the reps in. Yeah, we definitely can do that. That segues into the next piece. I'm actually going to ask for one more lesson. So we asked lesson learned for each of the 2 lifts, but overall, what were some lessons learned from the experience? What would you, anything that you would do again that you did that worked really well, or maybe one thing that you would do again, and one thing that you maybe would change next time from an overall experience management for how the world's
do again. Obviously, with timing and everything, it's hard to say exactly how it would all shake out. But I was very happy with my prep leading up to my first lift. I was very happy with waking up early, doing that walk, eating breakfast and fully digesting. I think I very consciously tried to intelligently carb load, eat a lot, but not to like bloat. So I'm sure it was not perfect, but I actually was feeling very good physically going into the set and things like that. So that I think worked out pretty well. Not that I don't want to lose focus and do it poorly next time, but I was very happy with that. But I would like to have gotten that, but maybe I got a little comfortable and didn't keep my focus quite as well as I could on my snatch set. So maybe I need to dedicate some time during that hour, maybe a little more time, get into the warm up area a little sooner and drill the technique a little bit and remind myself. Obviously there's a balance. You don't want to overdo anything, but try to get the brain in the right spot.
Yeah.
So
yeah, maybe drill some hand placement drills, just move into that right position a few times over and over again. I would also say, if I could add one, I would say bring sandpaper and maybe your own chalk next time. That's
yes.
like simple things, right? And that's experiential things. Those are those little things that like veterans just know.
Yeah.
As a first time international competitor, right? Like I will say, don't bring little baggies of in your carry on, because it's to get looked at suspiciously. But if you're gonna bring your chalk, check it, put it in your checked bag, and maybe in block form or something. But
yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of little learning, little things, and just getting comfortable with the way it all plays out. I think next time I go back, I'll be a lot more. I'll have much more of a game plan for every aspect of it, for getting ready, for warming up, for chalking the bells. I will actually have, this is exactly what I'm going to do, set out in my mind, ready to go. Where there was an overall plan, but there was also just an inexperience. So I just didn't even know what would come in. I didn't even know what I needed to plan.
I think you went into it with the right level of preparation, because you're like, I don't know what I don't know. So I don't want to over plan, because plans are worthless, but planning is invaluable, as I think it was Douglas MacArthur said that, right? So like, you can have everything articulated to the nth degree, but when you get there, if something goes sideways, right, you're going to have to scrap that whole plan anyways.
Yeah.
You find out, oh, I've only got 1 minute to prep my belt. Oh, okay. Then I guess I can't do everything that I had planned, and you have to scramble a little bit, but that's okay. But I think you went into it with a pretty good level of, you had a plan, but you weren't overly prescriptive, because you didn't know what you didn't know, which I think is good. And now just reflect on it. We retrospect and we say, okay, what can we do a little bit better next time? What are those little things? What are the big things? I loved the big takeaways that you had. And now for me, now I'm thinking about, okay, let's dig in a little bit on physiologically. What do you feel like strengths, weaknesses? So either technique or even just physical capacity things, like where do you feel like we need to focus our attention as we start looking at next block? When do we want to compete again? And what do we want? What are we trying to focus our development efforts on? Where do you think you want to focus from an standpoint?
I'll start with, and you can bring me back down to earth or tell me if this is reasonable or what I was hoping that tentative goal hit CMS on the AKLU table with the 28, with the whenever that is reasonable to do. We trained a little bit with the 28s for a little while, and I did a 5-minute set, a 5-minute biathlon with them.
No, I'm just kidding. That's not a secret.
And I enjoyed that. And I felt good. And I'd like to seeing the elites compete at Worlds was very inspiring. And I would like to build up to being able to do that at some point. But jumping right to the 32s is ridiculous
Yeah, we're not
after the
gonna do that again for
24s.
that. We don't want to break you, even though
Yeah,
Mike says I
yeah.
can't. I'm not going to throw you on the 32s. We will. We will.
Yeah. And I've played with the 32s at Mike's gym for never more than like a minute set or something. But like I can tell that I need some time with 28s before the 32s are within the realm of realism. So that was my tentative goal was I want to hit CMS, but I also want to start pushing myself to those heavier weights. So I think maybe we aim to try to hit that
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, I love that. I got to check the data. I don't remember top of my head what the numbers are, but I know when I looked at your numbers on the 24s, I was like, oh, rank 1 is in the bag. Because I didn't plan.
Yeah.
I didn't plan for there being a catastrophic tear and the bell goes flying. And when I saw your number was 100 jerks, I was like, all right, he's in a really solid position to hit rank 1. Felt really good. Felt really good about that. Like your capacity's there. We'll look at what is. So the way I do this from a data perspective is I look at what is our current kind of total volume output at competition. So we'll set aside that you had a tear and you dropped it at 3.5. We'll look at the training data and say, okay, what were you consistently hitting from an average volume perspective? What were we able to do in training? What were we able to do on the day? What was the volume that you were prepared to do on the day? And then what is the delta between where we need to be for CMS and where we are right now? And then what we try and do is look at basically what is a progressive overload of 10 to 15% at a time in each meso phase. So 3-month blocks, looking at 12 weeks at a time. I can pretty safely progress people 10 to 15% every 12 weeks. That's the general formula that I generally follow, because anything over 15%, you can do that, but you start exponentially increasing the risk of injury the further above 15% threshold that you go. It starts being a hockey stick asymptotic curve where you're like, okay, the more I spike their volume once I'm over 15%, I'm just really increasing the likelihood I'm going to break them. So I basically look at those numbers and say, okay, based on that, how long would it take us to do this? If we do it in a linear fashion, how long would it take us to go from here to here? And then I account for the fact that it's going to be nonlinear. Because we have to do some undulation, we have to do recovery periods, as like we did before we went to Worlds, where it was like we need to skip. We worked the 28s to build some strength capacity. Then we worked to build up some endurance capacity. Then we did a little bit of a deload because we were like, we got to feel good coming off the plane. We got to feel good coming off the plane. So we did a little bit of a deload. So we'll take that into account as well. And without having looked at all of the data and had time to think about it, my brain was like 6 to 12 months probably is CMS from where we were at with the 24s to the 28s. It's probably closer to 12 months, but we'll see. I got to work the day, but totally in my head, that's a reasonable goal, right? Like going from being able to hit rank 1 to CMS capability on the 28s. Now again, it's non-linear as you go from 24s to 28s, right? It's a step function function increase in intensity. So non-linear response to that increase in intensity, but yeah, I think it's a pretty realistic goal. What do you think the biggest areas physiologically that we need to develop? What are your best strengths? And what do you think is the primary thing that's your limiting factor?
I would say we'll start with jerk. I'll say on jerk, my legs definitely start to burn, but I can they still function. What has always been the first thing to go on jerk is my triceps ability to actually lock out. Eventually my elbows can't quite get there. And I think part of that is strength. And I think part of that is not perfect overhead mobility. So I think that you combine getting tired with not having perfect overhead mobility. And when you get tired, that's what breaks. So I think for jerk, I would like to compete, which we have been working together, and we've actually improved my overhead mobility a lot since we started working together, just doing training and stuff. And I feel like it's gotten better
Oh yeah,
because we started
definitely.
working together. But I think it still could improve more.
And it's gonna have to, honestly, like for us to get you on those 28s and those 32s, like that lockout is gonna be so important. The heavier those
Yeah.
get, because that's the difference between being able to turn muscles off and let them get some recovery in those extended positions, and like just fighting the weight the whole way through.
Yeah. Yeah. So at least on jerk, I think mobility and then just continue to just get stronger
Yeah.
overall. I would say stronger legs will help, stronger shoulders will help, stronger triceps will help. But combining that with just continuing to get the comfort overhead and being able to relax overhead.
Love it.
And of course, everything a little more cardio wouldn't hurt, but I think that's the number one thing, of course. That
I think your cardio capacity, if I was going to list your strengths, I would say your cardio capacity is one of them, because of your lactate threshold and how well you
yeah,
how well you perform at high heart rates. And that's a huge credit to your swimming and water polo background, right? You're just, like you said, like, it's not that it's comfortable. You're just more comfortable. You're just more comfortable in that orange zone,
yeah.
that orange and red zone than than most people are. I think that's really good. Okay. I got you there. All right, what about Snatch? I know we're over time, so I wanna be respectful of your time, but I want to get.
No, you're fine. I would say Snatch is, of course, it's the two front battle. Number one, I would say form is the number one thing that needs to work on, which is probably true for almost everyone on Snatch, I imagine at a certain level.
It's a finicky lift.
But
You got to get your
it's which is which
and
is
you got to
totally
get
fine.
your technique figured out.
Yes.
That's the really hard part, is like, I can tell you what all of the best practices are in principle. Like, it's all principle based, right? Like,
Yeah.
understand the principles, right? Like, long lever arm on the way up so that you can counterbalance your force vector of leaning your body weight back while the force vector of the weight going that way can counterbalance, so it's less effort. But you have to figure out what are the right angles for that, for you to express that.
Yeah.
And then on the drop, we want to shorten the lever arm so that the path of the bell is closer to the body. It doesn't pick up as momentum. It's not as hard on the grip. But how do we achieve that is different for
Yeah.
everybody's body type. And then sometimes it changes during the set based on, like, hand tension or triceps or where's fatiguing, or
Mhm.
there's those things. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, there's probably a lot we can do on tuning your technique. You don't have any,
Yeah.
you don't have any huge major gaps, but it's all those little things, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
all those incremental, like, quarters of inches that add up over over the course of 200 reps or 160 reps. Like, all those little savings,
Mhm.
efficiency add up to being able to make it the full 5 minutes on one hand and then switch, and all those little things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that combined with just the other thing that's always with Snatch is you can always get your grip endurance better,
Yeah.
which for me is definitely as good as the cardio base and comfort swimming has given me in that regard. Yeah, I also it's a sport that really has zero grip strength requirements.
Yeah,
so,
that makes sense. And then skin is
so
actually, this is actually one of those things that maybe I'm weird, but people forget that the skin is an organ system, right? It's actually the
mhm,
largest organ in the human body is the skin. So
yeah,
and in the same way that you have to train your cardiovascular system, your muscular system, you have to train your skin as well. And
yeah,
that's right. It just takes time to build that tolerance. It takes time, consistent application, freedom from injury, and then recovery from injury when it happens, all of those things. So there's the physical expression of strength, and then there's also the ability to tolerate the tension in the skin
mhm,
as well, is another thing that we can develop as well. And that one's a little trickier, but
yeah.
is one that's technique
So
as well as grip strength, and then skin conditioning by consistent application, like you said, more reps, consistent application of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I will say, strength wise on Snatch, not that my heart doesn't pound and not that I'm not breathing hard, but I would say that almost never do I feel like the cardio is holding me back
Yeah.
on Snatch. It always feels like what's holding me back is the grip, which I think is a combination of just improving the grip endurance and improving fine tuning the technique.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's been the case since day one, since we started working together. It's always
yeah,
just been about And that makes sense. It's less weight, right? It's one bell as opposed to two. Of
Mhm.
course, heart rate doesn't respond as much to that, but yeah, that's been consistent.
Yeah.
We'll keep building that. But love it. Yeah, these are all good. Awesome, man. Are there any other lessons learned or any other focuses that you want to have as we move into this next training block? When are you competing next? I guess that's the next step.
That's maybe one thing we should talk about. I know that Mike plans to have another comp here in DC sometime in the fall. I don't remember. I don't know if he actually has a date set for it yet, though.
Last I had talked to him, it was targeting sometime in October, maybe late October or early November. I'm not sure though. I gotta touch
Yeah.
base with him.
So as long as I'm in town for that, we have one or two. I think we're going to be gone for 2 weekends in October for various things. One of which means one of
With your
them I will
with your
definitely be gone
fiance,
and not
right?
be able to make it to All American. Say again, sorry?
I said is with your fiance now, right?
Yes, with my fiance. Well, that's the thing is me and my fiance are going to a friend's wedding. And then the other thing is we're actually going out to where our wedding venue is in Colorado to do like a tasting of the catering and select stuff. So wedding planning things. But as long as his competition doesn't overlap with that weekend, I plan to go to it. 'Cause I feel like it's the local. I have no reason not to go and do at least a lift and get experience on a platform when it's in town.
Yeah, for sure. That is one of those benefits of living in a major metropolitan area.
Yeah.
Someone does actually host competitions, right? Yeah, to not have to get on a plane to go lift is such a wonderful experience. So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely encourage that. And then of course we can do virtual submissions too for some of the competitions that still
Yeah.
virtual submissions. And you could probably convince Mike with a decent bottle of something that to come let you come film a set in for a virtual
Yeah.
submission at his
Oh, I'm sure he would. I'm sure he
at
would.
his gym. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
get something on the books.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what the next one will be. I know for sure that, like I said, I know for sure that I have plans for All American, which is in October. So I won't be able to go to that one, which is a bummer because that one is, it's not as convenient as in town, but that one's also drivable for us in DC.
It's all on the connected eastern seaboard of one
Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
that
It's
just
just,
drew
it's a couple hour drive, but it's only just a few hours. So it's definitely
spoken like a
also,
true East Coast city person. Only a couple hours away. That's not too bad.
yeah. Yeah. But you got to remember that I'm also used to live in Colorado and would drive 7 hours to visit my family in Montana. So you're like,
Yeah.
if it's less than that, how bad is it really?
Which part of Colorado?
I lived in Golden for my undergrad
Okay.
and then Fort Collins for grad school.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm in from none of those cool parts. My family. I've got family from the flatlands. Sterling and Greeley out by the oil derricks and the rattlesnakes and the
Well, Greeley is close to Fort Collins. It's a little bit more east.
yeah, a little bit further from the mountains.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely firmly in the Kansas part of Colorado, but
Yeah.
it's still nice.
Some locals might disagree with the niceness of it, but some people love it. Some people don't. Some people love it. I've got family there. That's where my parents hail from originally. It will always have. I've spent way more time out in the flatlands than in the mountains, so it will always have a soft spot in my heart. Although I do love Denver and Fort Collins and Boulder and all of those areas. Colorado's lovely. So good on you, man. That'll be fantastic. I'm really excited for you. I can't wait. I can't wait to see the pictures, and you guys are going to have a blast out there tasting, and then obviously getting married is great. So good on you. Well, Cole, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm going to give you the question I ask everybody as the coup de grace. If you had one tip as somebody that's been doing this for a little while now, if you could go back and give a tip to somebody that's brand new starting this adventure, they just discovered kettlebell sport and they're getting into it, what would be the one tip that you would pass on to somebody that's just getting into kettlebell sport now?
One tip, someone just started. I would say, as hard as it may seem during a 5 minute set or longer, try your best to have fun and don't shy away from just practicing the reps and practicing the repetition. To harken back to when I used to teach swim lessons, Sometimes you need to just swim. Sometimes you need to just lift, and you will get better. I promise. With time.
Just keep swimming, just keep lifting.
Yep. Just keep swimming.
Love it. All right, man. Thank you very much, Cole. I appreciate you taking the time to do this and being willing to let people peek behind the curtain a little bit of some of the coaching conversations that we have as we debrief from your comp. Super proud of you, by the way. Like,
Thanks.
I know I told you that before, but super proud of all of the time and effort and energy and dedication that you put into prepping for that. And you did put up a really solid performance. I know you're not super happy with the tear, and that kind of sucked, but those things happen. But it was
Yeah.
you did a great job. You represented really well, and I can't wait to see where we go next, man. You're gonna kick ass on the.
Can I ask you one last before I go?
Yeah,
When should I expect to have some more workouts?
Probably tomorrow. Honestly, I've got time. That's what I'm going to be doing I'm going to go put my kids to bed, and then I've got a whole bunch of people that I owe some programming for. So I'm going to be,
all right, sweet.
I'm going to be doing programming tonight. So we will take this information and turn it into the next block.
Awesome. Yeah. Italy was fun, but I'm itching to live. It's been a little bit.
Let's get back to work. I love it, man. Good on you, and appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much, Cole. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a great night.
You, brother. You too.